and also thank you for coming here. Today must be your first day at work after long holiday, and thank you so much. And also, like I reached out to Skandakumar and requested this opportunity to talk to you about my research, because I would like to hear your like feedback, comments, and discuss about my work. And I'm also like one of the purposes of my visit this time to Sri Lanka is actually to talk to people about my research, different audiences, because I feel that we, like researchers and the society and also the other researchers, we live in our own cells, and we don't connect with others. So I thank you for the opportunity. And I'm currently doing a postdoc at the University of Dundee in the business school, but I'm also teaching part-time in the urban planning program. I have been teaching since my first year of the PhD. So that's like, I understand that, like, I feel like I'm in different places. In Moratuwa, I taught in the transport department, so I have been everywhere. And that intersectionality is something that I try to bring into my research. And at the same time, my research reflects about me as well. So yeah, I'm from Nelibewa, and when people ask me where I'm from, I say Kuliapitiya. But Nelibewa is 20 kilometers away from Kuliapitiya, and it's a remote village. And as we know that the colonization project and the development project, they are not homogeneous. So Nelibewa is a place that was less impacted, or pretty much not impacted from the colonial project and also the post-colonial development. But in my lifetime, I have seen how Nelibewa transformed. So yeah, this is Nelibewa. It's in the Kurunegala district, and it's like, I have been told by people that it's out of nowhere, but it's somewhere, and that's where I am from. And so because of the remoteness and how less integrated probably the place to other places, it has not had much impact from the national or international discourses. But so in my experience, within the last 30 years, I have seen like how the housing in the village changed, and the village landscape changed. And now, like, even like the last year when I came, it was a different place than today. And my question, first when I started studying my village, I thought, like, how did it change? How this transformation happened? And that's only when I started seeing the change in Nelibewa was led by women who went outside of the village, as well as women who stayed behind the village. But the transformation has been led by them. So the physical change, at least 50 out of 140 houses today, they are funded by women's foreign remittances. And at least another 15 houses, they are partially funded, and some other houses, they are funded by women who migrated to free trade zones and work in garment factories. I studied about that also, but today I'm not going to talk about it in detail. So when I talk about the housing situation in the village, today I see modern houses, which means brick houses with clay tiled roofs, and also almost all the houses have electricity, water, at least a private well, and some of the houses, they have plumbing, and there are modern appliances, and all these things, they were introduced to the village mostly by the women who went abroad. And so they not only, in the presentation I'm going to talk about, like, how they did not only bring the money to the village, they brought different values. as they went out of the village, as they were exposed to the outside world, they changed. So the women who went abroad are not the women who came back. They were transformed. Even if they had to come back in a month or two, they were transformed. They had seen the world. So so this research I did as a part of my master's program, and that's when I did the field work first, and I did 6 months field work in the village. It was a very interesting ethnographic research because for my villagers, I'm not a researcher. I am one of them, and it was very interesting how they did not feel comfortable sharing some of the things with me. But when I called them from the US, that time I was doing my master's in the US, when I called from there, they shared some of the information they would not share to me face to face. And this critical intimacy I have with the village, that was important and interesting in some other ways, because for them, they could relate to me, so they would share some other. So I could see the both sides. And from then, I had been doing continuous observations, and even this time, when I go to them, now they talk about it, because I did this research some time ago, and I had been talking in some other platforms where some of my villagers joined these discussions, and they find it very interesting that someone is talking about Nelibewa and them to the outside world. My village head monk, who passed away recently, he really wanted me to take the name of the village to the world. So they see me as some sort of representative. So in my work, I brought my lived experience as well, and in some ways in writing, but in other ways, when I talk to them, I used my lived experience to relate to them and bring back their memories and stories. So, talking about housing, Dolores Hayden talks about how in 1950s, just after the World War II, in the US, the suburbanization started, and men were the ones to achieve the American dream, the modern house in the suburb, and women had a domestic role, and women were identified as good house managers. But like 30 years later, 25 years later, in a peripheral country in the world system, and in a peripheral village in Sri Lanka, women were the ones to achieve this dream. In 1977, the economy opened up, and this was also coupled by the 1965 very successful family planning policy. That was one of the most successful policies, I think, in Sri Lanka, that seeped into the people, the Punchi Paularattarang, the small families, golden story, because the women in the village who talked about the main reason for their migration, they mentioned how they wanted a house for their nuclear family. They highlighted that I at least needed a separate kitchen. Maybe it's not the entire house that I can build in the first round, but I need a separate kitchen from my in-laws. So this was their biggest motivation. There were other motivations. Michelle Gambert talks about how women wanted to educate their children and buy a vehicle for their house and pay out loans. But the main ambition out of all this was to build a separate house for them. And so in this story, as Skanda Kumar introduced, most of the time when we talk about women going abroad, in the media, in the scholarly work, we hear about how these women are victims. And we hear about all the unsuccessful stories. And I'm not here to say that no, they are very successful. They are not being exploited both in Sri Lanka and abroad. I'm not here to say that. But I'm here to say that these women also have their own agency, and they exercise that in changing their lives, as well as changing the village, changing their houses and the village. And when I talk to them in their stories, they do not even plan to change any of these things. They just want to respond to an immediate need that they have. They don't think in terms of big structures. They don't think in terms of a very long future. They think in terms of their challenges today, and they see this opportunity. They hear it from other friends and relatives in other places where they have gone abroad and they have made money. So they find this is as a very good way for them to address immediate issues that they are facing. So in my work, I'm using the concept of feminizing the village. Feminizing has different meanings, like it's mostly used in a very negative term, like feminizing the poverty and so on. But in this work, I'm using the term feminizing from the angle of women, from the perspective of women, how they are they are changing themselves and they are changing their spaces in order to make a more comfortable life for themselves. So Hayden observes a paradox. Women cannot improve the quality of their life without joining the paid labor force. And when they join the paid labor force, we hear about double burden of work, triple burden of work. Unless their domestic roles are transformed, they cannot achieve that liberation. So, of course, this is a very neoliberal idea, and the women in Nelibewa, I think last speaker, Professor Hevamana, talked about the neoliberalization of the village as garment factory workers are going back to their villages. So, however, in this situation, women are completely away from their houses. They do not have to carry the double burden of work because they are totally somewhere else, and they realize that their domestic chores, their domestic labor has a monetary value. So the changes in the village, they are in both these stages. In the absence of women as well as after their return to the village. We talk about how the families are broken up, and how children drop out of school, and how men become alcoholics, and all these issues in the absence of mothers. And I'm not really sure about this, but there have been a new policy introduced that women cannot go abroad, or they are working on it, that if they have children under 5. So absence of women in the village has seen as a big issue, and that has been even the government is trying to address that. And the village after women return from abroad, that part we don't discuss that often. So women change their identities through traveling abroad. By leaving the country, going to a new place, working, they expand their horizons. They become new women. They get new perspectives, and they see modern appliances. They start seeing the monetary value of their labor, and they become, in my experience in the village, in Nelibewa, women have become stronger, more independent, because people talk about that. People say like, oh, she's strong because she has been to Kuwait. So that's very common. And also, the last point, even like Michelle Gambett talks in her work, how women develop more bargaining power, not only with their family members, but the money lenders and others in the village. So how men respond? This is something that most of us don't talk about when we talk about women going abroad and families becoming messed, or like children dropping out from school. All these unsuccess stories, they are accounted to women. Mothers are absent. So if the children are under 5, mothers cannot leave them. But there are other stories in the village. I also studied in my master's research how men are absent in the village, mainly because of the civil war. And in their absence, women changed their roles. Women started taking over some of the responsibilities that men used to do. For example, women start riding motorbicycles. Women start riding three-wheelers. Women start working with masons and contractors to build the houses. They start going to the temple donor association and Maranadhara Samiti and all these associations, and they take over the responsibilities. And in the absence of women, men usually don't take over these responsibilities. The other members, other female members in the extended family or the neighborhood, they help in some cases, and this also changed over the time. At first, when women went abroad, their extended family and the other neighbors, they were looking after the children. But after a while, now the women's labor has been monetized, and they see how these women are bringing luxury items for their families and how they are building houses. Then the other villagers are like, no, like we don't want to do it for free. Why should we do it for free? And they demand certain things, and then when they don't get it, they stop caring for this family, even the mothers of these women. And in most cases, these women, they live in their husbands' houses and husbands' villages. And the other neighbors, they don't want to take over the responsibility. But men, they don't really take over these responsibilities. And I had 2 cases where men were like 2 men. They were very good at taking care of their children, and one was a mason. So he stayed at home, took care of 3 children, and started constructing the house on his own. And the other man, he was a farmer, and he started he has a 1 acre land. He cultivated the entire land, and they all have paddy fields, but he cultivated the land and started gardening, and also started working on the house with the other masons. So these 2 men, they were ridiculed in the village. Other villagers, they were saying, they were challenging their masculinity. They were saying that, oh, these 2 men, they are very, they use the term that I don't want to use here, and they are not masculine enough. They depend on their wife's income, and now they don't say the same thing to men who become alcoholics. They say, okay, these men are becoming alcoholic. This is not from me, this is from them. These men are becoming alcoholic because their women are very greedy. They left their family to go abroad to make money. So this is why these men have become alcoholics, and this is why their families have broken up. This is why these men have become sexually abusive or physically violent, or this is why they are doing self-harm. All these things, they are seen as something wrong with the women who went abroad. But in the 2 cases where the men were really good at it, it was the men's masculinity that was the question. So these stories, they are more complex than I can describe as well. And Michelle Gamble, she talks about masculinity in flux. She talks about how the masculinity of these men are challenged by their women becoming the breadwinner. So their response to reassert the masculinity is to go for another masculine thing, which is alcohol in her definition. So they become alcoholics. And I have seen other ways that they are trying to reclaim their masculinity. So going to housing situation. So I talked about how at least 1/3 of houses are fully funded by women's foreign remittances. And when women become the funders, when women fund their houses, they have a stronger voice. They become the architects of their houses. They become the architects of modernity. Sasanka Pereira talks about women, Sinhala Buddhist women being cultural archives. At the same time, they are the ones modernizing the culture. They are the ones modernizing their houses. And in the village, even my house, when I was a child, we had separate kitchen and the house and the kitchen, they were separated. And when guests come to the house, my mother or like women in the house, they are in the kitchen, which is separated from the house, and the men are in the front. Even now, it is the same for in most of the cases, but at least the house and the kitchen are the same building, same unit. So women can go to the kitchen, or like anybody in the house, basically, they can go to the kitchen inside. They don't have to go outside the door. And the bathrooms, the toilets, they were very far away from the house. And with women becoming the ones who fund the houses, they started building the houses with the kitchen attached and the bathroom attached. And we had a common well. I don't know if I have a picture, but we had a common well, a public well. But another thing women do is have their own well. And some women, they take another step and they have plumbing inside the house, but at least a private well. So these changes that they are doing, they are doing them because they have a say in their house. They can tell their family, and I talked about how their negotiation skills, how their bargaining power has gone up as well. They can talk with contractors. So with this, they also apply the experience that they have in abroad. They bring modern appliances. So in Nelibewa, not all the neighborhoods, but the neighborhood I was born, we didn't have electricity until 2010. And one of my batchmates is back there. And when I was in the university in 2008. But my mother, who was a teacher, who had a powerful voice because of her job, she pushed my father to move just outside the neighborhood. So we had electricity maybe when I was in grade 8 or 9. So even before there was electricity in the village, there were modern appliances. Women had fridge and oven and the modern electric appliances because that's what they buy. They use them back like where they work. So they bring these appliances, and even when there is no electricity, they use a sari or something to cover it and keep it there. And when they want to go back, when they want to go back and have money, the rich people in the village, they buy these appliances. And so in some neighborhoods, they had electricity, so they can use them as well. So these subtle things, they like from these negotiations, because these women bring the modern appliances, they are the modern ones. They have the appliances, so they become the pathway to modernity for the other villagers. And now the rich people who were left, or the elite people who were left in the village, I don't even want to use the word elite, but they were richer than the other women. And these families, they would cut down their trees or like sell part of their land to buy these modern appliances. And even when these women go abroad, they say like, okay, we'll give you this much money, and when you come back, bring us this. So these negotiations, they change the social hierarchy in the village as well. And now after the electricity, or like when there is electricity, when the women build houses, their kitchen does not have to be that big. Now they have smaller kitchen. And also, some of these changes. So they also have extended kitchen verandas, because women, I talked about this, women hang out in the back of the house, even now. I had pictures, but I don't have them today, but they hang out in the back, and they cook for public community events. And because of that, they have extended kitchen verandas. If they were not the ones funding it, if they didn't have the idea that they can have something that they want, they wouldn't have it. And also, as women are going abroad, the women who were left behind, I mentioned this, like even the women who left behind, they contributed to this transformation. Now they become, they also learn about the monetary value of their labor. Now they wouldn't look after the children for free. They would run small daycares, and they would have catering services, and they would cook for these families, India for something for these families. So these changes, they change their houses as well. Now they need extra spaces for these activities. So the housing changes not only in the women's houses who went abroad, but in the other women's houses as well. So we talked about the new identities and the hierarchy. So I remember growing up, I envied the kids in the families, kids of the mothers who went abroad, because they had all the fancy stuff in the village. And my mother, being a teacher, sometimes she used to pay these families and get some of the stuff for me, because I would feel left out in the school, because I don't have the fancy stuff, fancy pencils and things like that. And also they would have very loud radio, like the stereo, and it would be very loud in the village, especially after the mothers come home from abroad. So with these things, the kids in these families, they become the cool kids in the village. And this changes the social hierarchy in the village again. And I talked about how the rich people try to get things from these women. So all these things, they change the idea of the social hierarchy, and as well as the idea of caste. Some of the women who migrated, they were doing certain duties in the village. For example, I don't know if I want to tell the story, but the woman who washes, I don't know, the cloth washing cars, one of the women, she went abroad, and I remember she went abroad when I was small, but my brother started a relationship with this woman's daughter, and my uncle said, if you continue this relationship, we would stop having any family relationships with you, because they did this before she went abroad. But now, like, she's one of the very successful business people in the village. She has a grocery shop, but she's very successful and she's very rich. But still, like this is kind of oppositional to what I have written here. But this is why these are not like binary, or like I cannot say like this is this and this is certain. They are very nuanced and complex. But these lines, they blur. They are not the same. So so they not only changed the village, but they because they are privatizing the domestic roles. Now they are privatizing the childcare. They are outsourcing the cooking in the house. Because of these other small businesses, they pop up, and there are mills in the village. Earlier, like women used to do the grinding of grains and rice at home, but now they have mills. So this changed this changed the public spaces in the village. Handiya and Pola, these spaces, Nirmani Liyanage used to write about, research and write about. And also women start going to these public spaces. I remember Handiya was not a place where a girl would stay for a bus before, when I was small, but now like there are businesses, salons and grocery shops and different businesses run by women. And when I was doing my, when I'm actually, Nirmani studied the Handiya in my village, Maviyala, for her undergraduate research. When I was there with her in 2012, somebody in Handiya said, oh, that Akka, that's the woman who has a small shop, she's doing that shop there only because she went to Lebanon. Because she has to, her main customers are the truck drivers who are doing because there are sand and quarries and so these businesses, so there are a lot of trucks going around that area. So they said it's only because she went to Lebanon. So the others, they acknowledge this as well. It's not only women who have transformed. The other villages, they acknowledge that these women are stronger because they left the village and worked somewhere else. And according to them, somewhere that is very masculine and not friendly for a woman. So now, coming from there, for them, we are good men, they are the bad men. So she worked with bad men, so she can work with us. So that kind of attitude. So yeah, no, I'm not going to talk about it. So yeah, so I talked about this. However, in all these stories, women are not trying to change the patriarchy. They are not fighting with men. They are not thinking along these big structures or big lines that we think about. For them, it sometimes look like these women are carrying forward the patriarchy in some ways because they earn abroad and they build a house in their husband's family land, and even if they want to leave the husband or leave the family, now the property that she built from her labor is in her husband's name. So and some of these women, very rarely, like most of the women who go abroad, they are married women, but there have been few cases of unmarried women going abroad, and one of the main purposes of them going abroad, this was more visible in the case of garment factory workers, but for these women, they want to earn their dowry. So do they want to continue the patriarchy? No, from my experience, they gain more negotiation power by having their own dowry, or some of these women, they build their own house in their own village, so their husband can come and live with her family. So from these small negotiations, sometimes it looks like they are supporting the patriarchy or they are the ones carrying forward the patriarchy, but they create small cracks in big structures unknowingly, without even thinking of changing it. So, do I have time? Yeah. So I discussed about their desire for nuclear families, and then it conflicts with their need to be away from their family in this context, because when they are away, their extended family, or their villagers now, they don't want to look after their children or don't want to support. So there are differences and there are conflicts in the local values and their desires for nuclear family as well. And so all these changes, if we look at these changes as outsiders, they look like bad changes. They look like they are creating issues in the community life and the village. One of the girls in my village who had an IT degree in Moratuwa, she came to visit me on the New Year's just to talk about it. She talked about, she saw this post as well on my social media, and she has seen other discussions I do, and she came to me and she's like, but these are bad. Because of these women, the community ties are loosened, and their families are broken, and basically they are neoliberalized. They are very individualized. So how can you say that it's a good thing? I'm like, no, I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's not my place to say whether it's good or bad. For these women, for Nelibewa women who went abroad, they wanted something. They wanted their own freedom, their autonomy in their own kitchen. And if they want that, and if they achieve it, and if the family and if the men and the village do not support them, that's an issue that we can talk about. But looking at this from their side, women's side, these changes are not probably what they intend for, but the process that they go through, that's something that they want to go through. That's their choice, and that's their agency. So, of course, there is transformation of communal responsibilities. Even when I was small, like 30, 35 years ago, I remember the building a house was a community effort. In the village, bringing the mud and the sticks and building the walls and doing the floor and doing the roof, all these things were community work. It was a process. And in Sri Lanka, in Sri Lankan villages, we don't have designated public spaces per se. We socialize through activities. In Nelibewa, people socialize through funerals, different activities in temples. They don't even have a playground in the village. They don't have any public space. They go to the temple sometimes, or they use the some years ago at least, they used the kamata, I don't know the English word for it, but where they do plow the paddy. Yeah. So they use that, and or the paddy fields for playing cricket or something. But they do not have designated public spaces. They socialize through activities. When there is a funeral, the private houses, they become the public space for 7 days. That's a joke in the village. When my father passed away, I couldn't sleep on my bed because there were kids, the village kids on the bed, and we couldn't lock. If we lock a door, villagers would be offended. That's a public space for the time of the funeral. And so similarly, building a house was one of these activities where they socialized. But now, it was not just a one-time thing. You need to continuously repair the house, do the roof. And when I was small, I remember the homeowners would get on top of the roof and signal the villagers to come and help. And then all the villagers would come. You don't need to invite them. If you're on the roof and if you give the signal, then they know to come. So these things, they changed. Houses became a personal achievement. It's a social, it's a symbol of social status. It's not a verb, as John Turner would say. It's not a verb, in some ways housing still is, but the building the house and the process of this dwelling unit is not a process anymore. It's an individual achievement. So in this story, I see women, you gave a brilliant start saying that we see women as victims in this story, but we forget to see the agency, their agency, and how they transform the village, and how they transform their lives, how they transform their families. Of course, there are unsuccessful stories, but at the same time, there are people who have talked about these unsuccessful stories. But we forget to see, maybe we don't know what to do with these successful stories. Maybe we don't know how to respond to them. If they are successful, there is no problem that we can go and save them. But they are doing it. They are taking care of their lives. They might need some facilitation, they might need some regulations to avoid some of the issues, but they are the ones transforming the village, not the government, not the non-governmental organizations, not the corporate sector. It's them. It's their effort to have a more comfortable life for themselves and their family that's changing the village. And these negotiations, as I discussed, they are very subtle. They are not fighting the system. They are not fighting men. They are even sending money, knowing that their husband is spending them on alcohol. Because they are not saying that, okay, I'm not sending money because you are drinking. They are not saying that. But they do it in a subtle ways. And also, we discussed about this. They are modernizing without planning to modernize the village. They are transforming without planning to transform it. And the interesting thing is whose stories are being told. Because these women, maybe because we cannot save them, or there is no need to save them in a larger way, that their stories are not being told. At the same time, I see people see these stories, but they overlook. I quoted Handapan Goda earlier. She talks about successful stories. She talks about them. She writes the stories, but in her analysis, the success stories are not there. And I say, although there are unsuccessful stories, women are agents, but they say, like most of the other researchers I have been referring to, what I see from them, they say, although there are successful stories, these women are victims. so it depends on how we look at it and what we choose to tell as well. So, and their version of modernity, in some ways, it's not large scale, or it's not like, how do you say, it doesn't have a master narrative, but it's a very feminized version. Because I see in the village, when women want to do something, like most of the members or participants in the Samitiya now are women, and even the big village associations, but also women have small associations to help each other. And when women want to change this, their approach is in many ways it's very feminine. For example, when women have been repairing the bus halls in the village, and building and repairing the bus halls. And why they do that is because they want their children to have a shade over their head when they are waiting for the school bus, or when the garment factory workers, when they are traveling to work early in the morning or come late at night, they have developed repaired bus halls and built bus halls, and they are doing the street lamps on their own, and even in the village. Because they are the majority participants in the Samitiya. Now their priorities are different. They have been requesting and they have been working on getting a clinic, women's clinic to the village. So these, and also classes for their children. So their approach and what they prioritize, they are different. So because of their priorities are different and their approach is different, the transformation is also in such areas. When a woman go abroad and when a woman makes money, she thinks of buying a blender. Would a man think the same? So I would say there is a transformation that I can see clearly in the village, and this transformation has been led by women, and also the transformation is very feminine.